What does jumping in the deep end of the pool and conducting an orchestra have to do with IT? And could they be the secret to a successful IT career? My name is Charles Araujo, and welcome to the TransformIT show, presented by the Intel IT Center. In today's episode, I sit down with Charles Lee, the former CIO at Taco Bell, to talk about his interesting career journey and what he learned along the way. And he'll explain why the deep end of the pool was one of his favorite places to be, and how he sees himself as a conductor of the IT orchestra. If you're watching this episode at airtime, don't forget to participate in our live Twitter chat. Just follow hashtag TransformIT and ITChat to participate. And if you're not, well, make sure you catch the next one live so that you can join in the conversation. All right, let's get going. Are you ready to dive into the deep end of the pool? I'm here today with Charles Lee, the former CIO of Taco Bell and a bunch of other places, and we're going to talk a little bit about his career and specifically about some of the things that have led him to where he's at. So Charles, thank you for being with us today, and welcome to the TransformIT show.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you and I had the opportunity to sit down over a cup of coffee at a Starbucks or whatever it was, and you were telling your story, and one of the things that I started laughing about as we were going was that it seemed like you kept getting thrown into the deep end of the pool. And as I said that to you, you kind of reflected back on it and said, that's kind of right. And that you thought that maybe that was actually kind of pertinent to what happened in your career. So tell us a little bit about that, and maybe as part of that, your own story and journey.
So I'll tell it to you in three little small stories. First of all, I was an engineer working at a company called TRW in the aerospace industry in the 80s, and I'd had a pretty good career as a programmer and whatnot. And a mentor of mine went off, and he decided he was going to do some business development for the organization to expand its reach. And one day he invited me, hey, why don't you come and join me in doing this business development work? And I thought about it, and I said, I don't know anything about doing business development. And I remembered the words he said to me that just resonated throughout my entire career was, you're a smart guy, you'll figure it out. And wherever you get stuck, I'll help you. And so, long story short, had this opportunity to work on acquiring some new business, and we were very successful. We worked hard, worked through some challenges, and got through. So that was one story. The other story was, as you know, I have 3 children by way of adoption. And I remember after we adopted my son, how difficult it was to work through all the paperwork associated with adoption. And the agency that we worked with was based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we said, well, why don't you open an office in California and make this process a little simpler for people that are located here in Orange County? And they said, well, it's a little difficult to open offices in Orange County. So I said, well, if you're ever interested, let us know, and we'd love to help. And so 5 years goes by, and I'm working in my office one day, and my wife calls me, and she says, hey, got a call from Dillon International, and they asked if we could help open an office here in Orange County. And I thought about it for a second. She said, well, I already said yes. And I was thinking to myself, I have no idea how to do this, but I just remember the words. You know what? We'll figure it out. Things just kind of worked out really well. And we were able to meet some amazing people and help a number of families find wonderful children. And these wonderful children found wonderful homes. But I think the lesson there was there's an inner voice that tells you that you should do this. And it makes no logical sense as an engineer because you don't have any of the understanding. But you know what? That voice, you just have to listen to that voice. The third story is when I took the reins at Taco Bell. And it was an order of magnitude bigger than anything I had ever done before. But I remember that the people that I worked with just seemed so much more intellectually advanced than I was, and so much more experienced. But I sought out answers. I tried to figure out, how do I do this? How do I do this right? And I remember going to somebody that I respected who had a lot of experience, and I said, so how do I even get started with this? There's all these fires burning and everywhere. And one of the things that I remember him sharing with me was, you got to create a vision for the team, otherwise the people are lost. And so in the midst of all of this craziness that was going on, took the time to do that, and I created this vision. And I think that was sort of the launching pad for being able to accomplish things that we were able to accomplish. So there, it's just seeking out knowledge from people that you respect, and leveraging that knowledge in what you're trying to accomplish.
I mean, I think it's interesting. You talk about this inner voice, and I think, at least in my experience, there's actually two of them. The one that says, yeah, I can figure this out. And then the other voice is the one that says, maybe I'm not up to this. Maybe did they ask the wrong person? And I know when you were telling the story, you kind of said that a couple of times, like, they're asking me to do this. I mean, how do you well, maybe you don't have both voices, but I mean, how do you play that one out?
I think that all of us we're human, and we hear these what I've heard the term gremlins that say, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. It's risky. It's fraught with peril. But I have a deep-seated faith, and I try to listen to that voice inside that resonates beyond what is logical, and it breaks through that noise for me. And so I've made some career choices that were illogical, turning down opportunities that were amazing opportunities, from the outset, but it wouldn't have worked out with my family. You just have to really seek that voice inside and make sure that that's the right one for you.
I think that one of the things that is interesting, that when you were telling me this story, I was reflecting on my own career and realizing that I had a lot of those same moments, same moments where I got thrown into that deep end of the pool, had no idea what I was doing, but I had someone who had faith in me, and I rose to that challenge. And they became, I think, as you described some of these career-defining moments. But what I think is interesting, and I've actually told the story to a number of other CIOs who often sit back and go, yeah, that's right. I've had the same thing, or not just CIOs, a lot of folks. And then at the same time, I think we look and say, yet we are not seeing those same kind of opportunities be presented as commonly today. I think back 10, 15, 20 years ago, it seemed to be, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seemed to be more common. And today we seem to be, I don't know, maybe it's that we're more risk averse or whatever, that is leading IT organizations in particular, I think maybe business organizations even more broadly, to be less inclined to do that. I'm curious if you think that's the case, and if so, why, and maybe what can we do about it?
Well, I think this is based on my life, my career, but I think that one of the things that really changed the dynamic was the financial meltdown in 2008. I think as companies downsized and people went through these horrific experiences, emotionally, financially, and businesses went up and down. I think that it made people pause and not be as risk-taking as they would have been. So it changed that trajectory. But I think there's also another dynamic, which is the generation that's coming up behind us. And I think that we went through this period of time where we thought that somehow our careers, our jobs would define who we are as people. It would give us fulfillment, and it would meet all of our needs. And we took that, fully. And you see people that live that lifestyle where I remember growing up and my friends that were working for the Big Four, they would brag about how many hours they put in, lawyers, how many hours they billed, and it led to the destruction of a lot of families. And I think that the kids, the younger people that saw that go, you know what, they took pause and they said, do I really want to do that? And so in some ways they're a little bit more wiser than I was going through that period of time. So you're going to see a little of that going on as well. Given the opportunity, I think it's really important for people that are coming through to really seek opportunities and looking at the business and say, I know technology, but how can I take what I know to enhance the brand of the organization and build it? Or how can I help increase the profitability or the revenue side of the organization, and ask those kinds of questions versus how can I set up my clusters for my servers better, or create redundancy for my networks.
And I think that is the issue so I appreciate what you're saying, that maybe part of the issue is people are not as willing to sell their soul to their careers as maybe we were more inclined to in the past. But by the same token, I think that they have to be willing to take that risk, and they have to be willing to dive into that deep end of the pool. And where we're seeing maybe less of it happening naturally, we need to create those opportunities by volunteering and stepping in. I mean, what would be your recommendation, just briefly before we change subjects on this, of how someone might do that?
People that are coming in through the engineering ranks they usually have more things that they're asked to do than they can possibly fulfill, right? And they have to make choices about the areas that they focus on. And I think really trying to understand the language of the business and understanding the financials that drive an organization and what is important, and focusing on those questions more so. So, hey, there's an opportunity to work on a business intelligence initiative to understand, buying patterns, and say, I would love an opportunity to work on that project and jump into that. Or if it's even possible to maybe even step out of IT and work in operations, or partner with marketing to really get embedded in the fabric of the business, because technology is that digital, that framework for business today. And now just jumping out there, being able to speak the proper language and engage in the proper way. But I think there's some skills that need to be developed in order to do that, which is get out of the mindset of the engineer speak, and then get involved in the language of the financials and brand building that everybody else in the organization does. I mean, you and I have both been through those meetings where there would be a conversation with the executive teams, and the engineer comes in and they open their mouth. In that moment, everybody gets lost.
Right.
Their eyes glaze over.
Nobody understands a word, right?
But if they can take that and they have that ability to be able to translate what they're thinking into something that allows that other person to understand what they're saying, I think it will allow them to get in the game, so to speak.
So when we sat down, we also talked about your kids and how they got involved in the orchestra, and I love music, and so that was a fun conversation just in general. But then you kind of took it back to our professional lives and said that as you were going through that and watching all this kind of play out, that you saw some parallels between your own career and the work that the conductor was doing as he was working with your kids and just with the orchestra in general. So tell us a little bit about that.
As I observe, and I'm not musical in any way, I have the ability to sit back and watch their musical progression and watch how they participate in orchestras and bands and all that. And as I looked at the conductor, I was fascinated, because here's a person that plays no instruments, and what are they doing? And I wanted to understand that, because it feels like it's similar to the role of a CIO. I know that when you have the right conductor, there could be two conductors that orchestrate the same piece and they hit all the same notes, but the result of it can be quite different in terms of that experience. And as I thought about it, the role of the conductor is to study the score, understand what each of the players are going to play, and how all of this is going to weave together to create that sound that's unique to that conductor. The second thing is that a conductor is given a number of different instruments that they have to conduct. They're given different skill levels, and they're given different personalities that they have to work with, very similar to the role of a CIO. But I think it's that art and science of making sure that the musical piece is played correctly, but then also making sure that you give enough room for the individuality of each person and each instrument to be able to be played in a certain way. So you have in our field, you have people that operate at different ways. You've got people that like, marching band people, and you've got people that are improvisationalists. And I realize the key to making this all work is to make sure that everybody in the orchestra, plays to the same beat. But within that beat, they have that individuality. But everything has to come together. So when you see a person that's not keeping up, well, they're behind the beat. And then you see really talented, aggressive people that are really bright, but they go too far in front, and that can create a problem as well. And so the role of this of the conductor is to be able to make sure that everybody plays on the beat, and the result of that produces that sound or that music and the intent of what the score was trying to communicate. And so I think there's similarities in that way.
So I'm going to ask you from two different perspectives, from an executive's perspective and from a IT professional's perspective, maybe that up-and-coming leader. How do you strike that balance of being the good team player, but also unleashing that creativity and that individuality, because we're going to have to harness that if we're going to be successful?
I think that first and foremost, as a CIO, you have to have some good experiences. Like a conductor, you have to be able to have come up through the ranks, so to speak. And I'm not knocking anybody that didn't come through the technology ranks, because I know a lot of them that are really, really good at what they do. But it really helps to understand the sound of each of these instruments in terms of how does a server work? How does a network work? How do you build software?
But to your point, a lot of conductors haven't played all those instruments.
They haven't.
It's a matter of just having a respect for them, understanding.
Having
a
respect and understanding, and have gone through a few of those.
Right.
Because they have to work with other people in the other disciplines. So I think that's important, and not getting thrown into that too soon without having a nice base. I think as you get into the executive ranks, I think one of the most important thing is to build a rapport with your counterparts. And what is it that they're trying to achieve? And understanding their needs, and in the process, helping them think through the problem, and then being able to articulate how you can bring value to what they're trying to achieve.
As you look back on your career and you look forward to your future, what do you think is the one or two things that has really made the difference, has enabled you to not only be successful, but to be successful through all of this change? I mean, you haven't gone into a lot of it, but you've had a very varied career. I mean, a lot of different kinds of roles. How have you, what is that one or two things that has really been kind of the key to your success?
Well, I think early on it started out with, perhaps having a mentor and somebody that you respect that will take the time and the energy to look at what you're doing and provide guidance for you and help you along the way. And that... Did
you seek out a mentor when you were younger?
I like to say I was that forward, but no. I think that you build relationships with people, and in the process of that, somebody decides that they want to take you under their wing because they like you. Right. And there's something there that's good about being liked and being likable. And so I think a lot more doors get open when that's the case. And part of that is, having, being respectful of what everybody does. You certainly don't want to make enemies, but everybody has a different role, and you may not want to do what they're doing, but you have to respect what they're doing. And I think that's one thing. The other thing that is really important is this idea of being bold. And you have to be able to, it's hard to describe, but you just have to have that thing inside that tells you, hey, take a risk. What's the worst thing that can happen? Take a risk. And if you have that desire and you're willing to reach for it, and you got to work. Once you say, I want to take that, you got to put in the work. And when you do that, a lot of good things happen. You learn a heck of a lot. Every time you get exposed to a new area, your learning just expands, and everything that you already knew starts to expand as well. So I think the other part is, don't lose your soul. There are things that are important in life, and don't lose sight of it. I remember, sitting around my dad when he was dying of cancer. And I remember, my sisters and I sat around his bed. My mom and his sister flew in, and we were there, and we sent him off. And I remember how significant that impact was to say that he was a loved man. And never lose sight of the fact that with all this other stuff that's going on, that is the most important thing. And but the journey in life can be so interesting if you're willing to just embrace it.
It's interesting you say that, because I think that is one of the messages, and you talked about the younger generation, that it is possible to do all of this. It is possible to have relationships, mentors. It is possible to be bold and ambitious, and to do it in a way that you don't lose your soul, that you don't lose sight of what's truly important. It's not easy, but it's possible, and I think you've kind of exemplified that. So as we wrap this up, my last question to you is, at the end of the day, I love hearing these stories, and as I talked to you before, that's a huge part of what this is, to just get some of these amazing stories out. But it's also about the future for the viewers, the people that are watching, the IT professionals, the leaders that are trying to look forward into their lives and careers. And we want to make this very actionable for them. So what is the one thing that, if you were talking to each one of our viewers individually, that you would tell them to go do tomorrow, today, in the next 10 minutes? What is the one action that they should be taking from your story here today?
I think if it's one thing, is to get in tuned with that inner voice and figure out how to dialogue with it in an effective way, to take away that noise, those demons, those insecurities, and those terrible voices that you've heard in the past, and just go for it. I don't know how else to say it, is just take that first step today. Don't wait 5 years from now. Take that first step today, whatever it may be. Seeking out a mentor, when going and saying, hey, I want to do that. Taking that, I want to work on that initiative with marketing. I want to work on that, and I don't know what it may entail, but I want to do that. And I think that everything starts with that first step. Jump in and go.
At some point, you've moved past the point of analyzing. You just need to take action. Take action. Very good. Charles, it's a pleasure. I thank you so much for being with us. It was a great conversation, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to get a lot out of this, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow, that was inspiring. At least I know it was for me. And if I can sum up Charles's advice for all of us, it is to be bold, but to maintain balance. To be ambitious, but to not lose your soul in the process. And most of all, to take action right now. Don't wait. Don't overanalyze. Step forward and act. But I also know that it is sometimes easier said than done. So that's your question and your challenge. How can you get out of your own way, listen to that inner voice that's telling you that you can do it, and to take that bold action? And what will that action be? If you're watching this live, share your morning action, as I'm calling it, with all of us right now using the hashtags TransformIT and ITChat. Or post your morning action in the comments section here. But don't let this moment pass. Take some action. Also, don't forget to take advantage of everything available to you as you make your way on this journey. The folks at the Intel IT Center have made a wealth of resources available to you. You can check it out at www.intel.com/IT-center. In addition, you can also check out the free programs and resources that we make available as part of our mission at the IT Transformation Institute. Go to www.transformingit.org for more on that. Finally, if you haven't yet read a copy of my book, The Quantum Age of IT, Why Everything You Know About IT is About to Change, I'd love for you to have one. The folks at Intel have made copies of my book available for 50% off to all viewers of the show. And if you're one of the first to register for the next show, you can get a copy for free. So don't wait. Click the link below to register now and get your free copy. That's it for now. Thanks for joining us for this episode of TransformIT. And make sure you join us 2 weeks from now and participate in our live chat while you watch the episode. I'm Charles Araujo, and together we can change the world of IT.